Yeah, that's.
Larry's supposed to show. Oh, he is? Oh, I thought he was going to be.
Okay, it's 6:37. So we'll start the meeting. Malcolm's on his way. No baby yet. So, roll call, please, Sarah.
Trustee Meisel?
Here.
Trustee Wiggert?
Here.
Trustee Van Aden?
Here.
Trustee Gallegos? Trustee McDougall? Mayor Pro Tem Decay?
Here.
Mayor Tukey?
Here. Okay. So do we have any other revisions for the agenda, Sarah?
We just had one additional check that we needed to cut for cash to pay our election judges tomorrow. So that was added today.
Okay, so how much?
That's a $300 check.
And is every board member aware of the addition to the agenda of item A on continued business?
Okay, anything else? All right, then we'll go down to number 2, which is public comment. So do we have any public comment from anyone? Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming out as we go back to winter. For a short period only.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're down to number 3, which is proclamations and presentations. So our first is Mr. Dale Garland with the Hard Rock 100. So Dale, if you would.
Sure. It's that time of year, right? Again, Dale Garland, run director, Hard Rock 100 Mile Endurance Run. Do you need my address or phone number or anything for the record or anything? No, Sarah? Okay.
Did you used to work on the train? Sorry.
Well, yes, indeed, I think I did. Everybody, welcome, and thank you for allowing me to come and talk to you a little. Just and really kind of answer your questions. But again, I'm coming here. I'm representing the Hard Rock 100 Mile Endurance Run. I don't think I need to explain. Tiffany, I don't know if I need to explain to you the Hard Rock 100 Endurance Run. And just to kind of update you on what happened last year, and then kind of give you an update on what's transpired and what we'll be looking forward to in 2017. 2016 was a great year for us, and something that we were really proud of in terms of not only what happened athletically, but how the runners responded to the hospitality and everything of the communities. And we did an economic analysis and a kind of a customer survey of their experiences in Silverton. Both were very positive. And I sent you under a report and just kind of outlining basically what they thought. They thought the cost of goods and services was great, the friendliness of the community was great. We're estimating that, again, the numbers are in the $300,000 range in terms of economic impact of the Hard Rock 100. And I need to get my position downstairs in the door prior and said that Silverton and Hard Rock are now synonymous in the bigger world. And we are now, for better or for worse, a international event. And so the name of Silverton is getting out across the world. So if we fast forward to 2017, we're real excited about 2017. We did do one thing that does have a slight economic impact, and that is we cut down on the number of runners that we allowed in. We are actually allowing in 7 less runners. Our field is capped at 145 runners as opposed to 152. And it's kind of going in 2 directions because we decreased the number of spots, but we increased by, we had 2,100 applicants this year for 145 spots. And so we're kind of going both ways a little bit. But that's our feeling that we wanted to provide a quality experience, and at 152 we weren't quite sure of that, so we're going to drop back to 145, practice it, and then reevaluate increase our numbers. Our number of total applicants by a BLM permit is 250, so we've got some wiggle room for that. But again, we don't want to decrease the ambiance and the experience of the people who are here. This year, we had 2,100 applications. They came from 48 states, 49 foreign countries. So again, it is something that is worldwide in terms of the recognition that Silverton's receiving from Hard Rock. Many of you may be familiar, we also have as part of our philanthropy initiative, the Joel Zucker Scholarship. We're now over $67,000 contributing to the scholarship of local students to continue their higher education once they do so in high school. And we're planning on continuing to do that. A couple of things that we're working on for this year. One, with the Chamber and with the Sheriff's Department and with the Entertainment District, we're looking at possibly doing some kind of an outdoor festival. At the finish line, it is the centerpiece out in front of the school and the Entertainment District. And we want to make it so it serves a variety of purposes. One is controls parking, one is eliminates some of the hassles with open containers, as well as kind of provides a more festive atmosphere for the finish line. And that would be not throughout the entire night, because runners finish throughout the night. So this would be something we'd be looking at throughout from about 8 o'clock Saturday morning till about 8 o'clock Saturday night for that. As we usually do, we'll name the town of Silverton as an additional insured. And so all the insurance will be taken care of through Hard Rock. We do have a new Bureau of Land Management permit administrator, and I'm sure I'm not the only organization who deals with the BLM Forest Service to let you know that pretty much everything now is running out of the Gunnison office, and so we have a new permit guy who's overseeing our permit. I haven't met him yet. I plan on meeting him soon, but we're kind of saddened because we had a really good relationship with our former permit administrator, but I think all of the entities that are using BLM land are probably feeling the same way as things kind of shifted over to Gunnison. With the help of the Chamber and with the help of the local lodging, we started a matchmaking kind of thing. People are looking for places to stay. That's one of our biggest issues, and we've been able to put something online and match people in town who are looking to increase revenues and trying to marry up the people who are looking for places to stay and who have places to stay, kind of like almost a little Airbnb kind of thing. Just a couple weeks ago, we announced we selected our print. Every year we have an artist, different artists submit photos and things which become the official print for any year. This year we're happy to announce that Chris Furman, a local Silvertonian, his work was selected, and it will be splashed all over social media and in town. It'll be the official finisher's print and that kind of thing. We're working on the official print design even as we speak right now. I think that's all I have, other than to say we love being in Silverton, and we hope that we can be here in 2017.
Thank you, Dale.
Yeah. Got any questions or things?
Do you have any asks of the town, or anything that
I would defer Sarah and Mayor Cookie if there needs to be kind of permission to hold the event, or.
Well, we'll walk through, I mean, you guys submit your, I'm sure we'll just work through things, and you've already contacted me, and I've talked to Bill McDougall, so I think we're working through that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll do some stuff. I know we work with John. We've got a banner thing we've got to work through and that kind of thing. So I don't think so. I think it's mostly just, this is mostly just to kind of update you and say thank you and let you know how much we appreciate everything that the town of Silverton does. We know we kind of take over there in the middle of July when it's really busy, but we like it here. That it? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay, our second presentation is DHM design for the wayfinding. So,
Mayor Chief, I just want to take a quick second to state for the record that I came 5 minutes late, but I am here, and apologize to everyone for my tardiness. Still no baby.
Right, so my name is Katie Feeney. I work for DH Design in Durango, and we are a landscape architecture and planning firm, and do a lot of different signage work across Colorado. And I don't have a real formal presentation, but I'll kind of just walk you through what we've done so far. This, where are the best places? This is kind of our map that we started with, that we showed to the public. We had a public meeting a few months ago, I believe, and we had this there, and what we're looking at is doing an entry monument sign, kind of a larger monument sign out at the highway intersection, and then a smaller kind of vehicular level sign that would be throughout the town, kind of at the major intersections, and then a more pedestrian oriented sign to kind of direct people as they're coming off the train to direct them through town. So the major entry monument is kind of located here, right past the visitor center as you're going from Durango, kind of off to the side. And then you can see these different vehicular yellow dots are the vehicular signs, and we also kind of labeled what we would kind of have on those signs and directing people to what elements. And then the, let's see, the red dots are what the pedestrian signs were, and then this box up here is kind of some ideas of what would be on the pedestrian signs. And then we also talked about kind of rebuilding the kiosk to match the signage throughout town at the train. And then we've also talked about having kind of consistent street signs on Green Street and Blair Street. They kind of were oriented towards the Green Street district versus the notorious Blair Street district, and they kind of vary slightly, and I have some examples that we've kind of developed for that. So that's the map, if anybody has questions on that.
Can you give an overview of what the wayfinding program does and how it will benefit us?
Yeah, definitely. So right now, throughout Silverton, there's a lot of signs, but they're kind of not cohesive and maybe somewhat confusing to some visitors that would come to town. So our goal was to develop a signage package that really tied all the signs together, and that as a visitor comes into Silverton, they would recognize the sign from the entry monument through the town as you see the vehicular signs to the pedestrian signs, and really use those as direction and to navigate the town. Just so they would have, you know, a more clear idea of what is here and what they can see and where things are. And so that was kind of our goal. So let me kind of show you our options that we've developed. We did quite a bit of research, historical research, you know, Silverton and the mining industry. So this is our first, we've worked through quite a few options with the town. This is our first option, where we kind of took some of the mining, some historical mining photos, looking at the tram, the towers for the tram, and kind of incorporated those into a monument that would be on the side of the road, not necessarily going over the road. And these would be steel towers that would be meshed, lit internally so they would glow at night. And then a steel panel with Silverton. Right now we just say National Historic Landmark District. We could also have a tagline added. And this would be all steel, the letters would be metal. The sign could also be lit. We have kind of a truss system, just kind of relating to the mining structures throughout, some cables tying it down. And then here's an example of like the vehicular sign, so it still ties to the big sign, but is at a different scale that would be off the side of the road. And then a third sign that would be more pedestrian oriented down here with a map of the town, directing, maybe having a walking tour directing people throughout the town. Any questions on that specifically? You see the third option, and then our second option, and then we can answer any questions. So the second option, third board, is more of a natural, more natural materials we kind of worked with. Still relating to some of the mining history with some of the concrete. So the pillars would be board formed concrete. We had a suggestion from the town of incorporating some of the local geology into the concrete, so that would be set into the concrete. There would be a top timber. This would be kind of weathered barnwood, and then weathering steel letters on top of that, they would be protruding out somewhat. And then also the timber beneath. And then the vehicular level sign would be a steel post with weathered wood signs, and then sit with a concrete base, and then the pedestrian sign would be similar to that as well. And then we also came up with a second pedestrian sign that would be kind of like just a concrete base with a slanted map that people could easily view. How we're located close to the town.
What would the lettering be on the weathered wood? What would it consist of? No, on this,
Oh, down here? They would be metal letters. We were thinking those would be white, just because they popped. That's kind of a consistent character throughout town. So yeah, all the lettering would be white, or would be steel, powder coated, and popped out so we can pin it. So it would be, protruding a little bit, having a little shadow on it. And everything would be lit. You could light it from different ways, whether we light it from the ground or have a light built in shining down. Do either way. We did look at some options that went over the road, kind of arched over the road, and the town kind of gave us direction to have kind of a standalone sign because there were some concerns of big trucks coming in or that could interfere with that. Any thoughts or comments?
I think that I agree with the idea that a sign over the road is not a good idea, maybe for a different reason, because of where the location of this sign needs to be. Going over the road, it would actually be going over the state highway, and we've dealt with them before with the banner poles, trying to get something over the highway, and determined that it was best just to put the banner poles up on Green Street as opposed to down on Highway 550. We want this a little bit closer to the edge of town, so that would eliminate the over the highway type signage. So.
And then we also talked a little bit about, there's discussion, and this is kind of a bigger discussion with CDOT, but whether this intersection changes in the future, and if it were to become a roundabout, that would be a great location for maybe a secondary sign or maybe an art piece that would be related to the signage, in the future. We could use some of the historic materials throughout town to create something pretty unique there.
You're talking pretty seriously about that turnstile.
Mark, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I'll keep whining.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I had on the roundabout. I'll keep working at it. So the squeaky wheels started good, and now everybody's going, what the hell's going on in the world? But we'll keep asking. And they're definitely, roundabouts are what they want to do, and they're consistent through CDOT now. So.
I like option 2. It's called like this.
I do too.
I love the
With the wood, Pete, and the concrete, I like it better too.
I picture that lit and looking.
Even though the other is geared more towards mining, I do like the other one better.
So these are pretty large, and the reasoning they're so large is because we are showing them off of the highway. The snow does get built up there, from the snow plows. So we looked at it this winter, and at times I think it was about 6 feet tall. There is another option that we could build more of a landform and bring that ground up because it's pretty low, kind of where we're thinking this would go. Bringing the land up into a berm, and then maybe the monument wouldn't need to be nearly as large. We could make it slightly smaller if budget were concerned. So our kind of next step with this project of our role is we would narrow it down to one option, and then we do a construction kind of detail of the sign. We won't do structural design yet, or electrical, that would be in the next phase once we got funding for construction. But once we kind of have it narrowed down to an option, we could develop more of a construction drawing that we could get funding, start looking for funding.
And did you guys do a cost analysis with these ideas as well?
Yeah, so I did, and just a disclaimer on that
Okay.
is that, you know, they're conceptual, so we don't have structural design, so I don't know on either one how deep the footings would be, for instance.
Gotcha.
But I do have a ballpark with the size. The steel one is probably would be a little bit more expensive than the second option with the concrete.
Gotcha.
But ballpark, 60,000. Probably 50 to 60,000. And then there's options that we can do. This on the vehicular sign, we went ahead and did kind of a more custom pole here. You could just do a solid, simple pole for the vehicular signs, which would make it a little less expensive.
In the case here, I talked about other communities who have gone through the spray funding program and they've looked for funding opportunities.
Yeah, so we have worked in Victor. Are you guys familiar where that is? Towards Colorado Springs, another mining town, and Bridgeway as well, with their wayfinding. So in Victor, they got a actual federal grant that was specific to scenic byways. It's called a TAP grant. Because they're on the Gold Belt Byway there. So that's a potential, and that's where they got some funding for theirs. And then Ridgeway they are a DOLA Main Street. And so that opens them up to some mini grants that are also available for those downtown, they're called DOLA Main Street mini grants. So I think the town is thinking about becoming, or applying, I don't know exactly what the process is.
We're a Main Street affiliate. Yeah, we have to do it a little more to become a member of the Main Street program.
So that opens up some funding, and then there's GoCo too, which is probably the state of Colorado's biggest funding. They potentially could fund some of it.
I don't think they can. They only do recreation, but CDOT potentially.
So the 60,000 or 50 or $60,000 includes all of the signage,
That would be the large one
or just the
with
big?
the steel. So that would just be ballpark, yeah, this big, large sign. I mean, it's pretty large. It's 30 feet wide. Like this one's 12 feet tall, and the other one's.
How much for the whole package?
So this smaller sign on this option, the vehicular sign, about let's go through this option first. So this sign, about 9,000 for this one. This one has the most panels. So some of the other ones we were showing would not have as many, blades on it.
And how many of those 310?
I think we're showing 7. 6 or 7. And those can be phased, there's probably some that would be more important than others. 6, we're showing 6 of them. And then pedestrian level signage, about 6,000 for this one, and then about 3 for the smaller one with just a sign panel handled on it. And then, it's really ballpark, I'm doing it off of rendering, so once we have it more in more detail, we could get a clear number. And then the steel option.
Can I ask, have you had feedback in completing these projects that they've made a big impact? I mean, do people follow up with you with that communication, or?
I think so. I mean, they keep adding more. So in Victor, we've done, last summer, I think they built 2, a big kiosk and then a welcome sign, and now they're doing their 3rd sign. So they kind of have a master plan signage package that they've done. They just keep, going through it. And then Ridgeway, I do think it helps a lot there. They have quite a few. They haven't done their big entry sign, But they did those big banner poles in the park, in the corner of the park last year, and then some kiosks, and they plan to do a few more this year. And they kind of just, you know, as they have funding, build them. So I think the Ridgeway has helped quite a bit. In Ridgeway, they have that big banner pole sign, so they hang banners across it advertising what they have going on in the park. So this option, ballpark 60,000 for the entry sign, the vehicular oriented sign. I have about a little under 12,000, and then the pedestrian oriented sign about 9,000.
How many of the pedestrian oriented signs do you have on the whole plan? 6. Okay.
About 4 of the pedestrian ones and 6 of the vehicular signs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So doing the math, it's about 123,000.
That's about right.
But like you said, we could do the big sign and then phase
Yeah.
as financing comes in, right?
Yeah, and like I said on this particular sign, you know, there's some stuff. This I think you want pretty specialized, but for instance on this one, you could just do a steel post and not do this kind of ornate post and on both of these, and that would simplify it and make it a lot less expensive. So that we're just showing, you know, the most expensive, and the other vehicular signs that I had shown did not have as many blades, so that was something as well. And then what else did I say? And then, yeah, let me show you, I haven't shown these, a few examples of what signage, we really like the signage that was the street signs on Blair Street.
Thank you.
That you did, yes. And so we kind of took those and built off those and just made it, the text is a little hard to read now. So I just have 5 of these so we can show. These would be kind of what the street signs would be potentially, or just, it's just to differentiate between Boone Street and Blair Street, to kind of give it a different character. We talk a lot about having those two streets having a different character. So it's kind of building off the sign that's already there, but just refining it slightly. And trying to use similar materials, and maybe they would change a little bit depending on which option was selected, but. So, yeah.
You know, guys, it is a fairly big expense. When I travel to other towns and other areas, one of the things that always makes the area look good is good wayfinding. I think it really changes the appearance of a town, and I think we should proceed to try to do some of these ideas. I also think we need to be careful not to jump in too much right away, and we need to prioritize what is the most important signs, get those ones done, and do this over the period of maybe a couple of grant cycles.
I think she made a really good point that having a signage master plan
Yeah.
and phasing this out over time and budgeting for it and putting it into our overall capital improvements plan.
Yeah, that's.
Sometimes facade is as important as infrastructure.
I agree with that 100%. But I do think it would really change. Overall, once it's all done, I think it would really be a really good, it would look really good in our town. Something we've needed to do for a really long time.
I'm wondering how this would fit in with your already adopted Main Street program that included street lighting and some other things that have never happened. Where does this fit in that priority of things, or are you skipping some things to do something else? We spend a lot of time on subjects such as this prior, and all we've gotten out of it so far are trash cans.
You know, first, the DCI report calls for a lot of changes. Trash cans was kind of a low-hanging fruit, which I think is why those were done first. Street lights is on it. Wayfinding is a part of it. There's a lot of pieces to it, and I think that we need to look at the DCI and do exactly what you're just saying as far as prioritizing what needs to come first. Street lights are great. They're also quite a bit more expensive. to do all the streetlights. At least I would perceive them to be quite a bit more expensive to
I
do
think it comes-
custom light poles in Blair Street and Green Street, so.
It comes down to consistency and having consistency within your government and your staff, being able to follow through with the plan. We have a lot of plans on the shelf.
Well, that's my question, is how are you gonna organize this and who's gonna do it and how do you set your priorities?
Well, ultimately, our priorities are infrastructure. So as we're saving and building for capital improvements, they're going to be our greatest priorities. But we do have to sort of have in the back of our mind, you know, we need to be building our greatest tax base, which is tourism. And we need to do that by putting back into our downtown, into revitalizing our businesses, our community, our events, all that.
Well, yeah, I realize all that, I'm just curious, how do you know what's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4?
I think whatever's going to have the biggest impact for the least amount of bucks is obviously priority. And in a way, I kind of see this as low-hanging fruit as well compared to some of the other really big changes like curbs and gutters, those sorts of things. So I know I like it. I wouldn't mind putting this towards putting a priority on this over some of the other things that I've read in the DCI report.
And maybe you wait and you figure out what happens at the intersection out there and you hold off on this until you figure that out. And maybe you start building your wayfinding signage through the town to start really directing, people to circulate throughout. It's just a thought, maybe.
The point to this is that we've never even done this before. We've never looked at it. And because of the grant that we were able to get to assist us with the wayfinding with these folks, this was the time for us to get this plan down. And if we go back to the DCI report and we say, hey, there's some other priorities, or if other priorities like infrastructure are on the plate first, we can always come back to this. But this was the time to get the overall, wayfinding plan done because of the grants that we were able to get to assist us with it. So even if we don't touch this for a couple of years, it was still good for us to do this now. It was less money for us to do this now than it would be potentially in the future. So.
I mean, there would be a possibility that we look at all of these plans that are shelved and
it's much easier to prioritize when you have this in front of you. When you don't have this in front of you, it's hard to say whether, where this fits in the priorities. So I personally am really happy that we did this.
do we want to do it as a board, or do we want to give it to this, involve Fritz in this, or Fritz, you don't have any, you have a lot of spare time, I know you do.
Well, the town board can determine how you do it, but at some point I think you involve not only the chamber, but the business community and the community as a whole.
That's right.
So that you get the right stuff in the right order and you don't blow through money that has to be redone at some point because you forgot to do something first or what have you.
I think we've made a really good effort to try to include the whole community in this process, both in the DCI conferences last year for downtown revitalization and with the wayfinding program. And we've had representatives from the San Juan Historical Society there. We've had the Blair Street Historic District Association there. We do want the input of the community throughout the process as we go.
And there have been a number of public meetings on this topic alone.
So what do we want to do at this point? And do we want to put together a group of people, or what are we going to do? We need to do something.
Mayor, may I? I would suggest doing something like we do in Public Works. We have a list. Now this is going to be a lot more subjective because in Public Works you have priorities that set themselves. But we start with a list. Staff can compile the list based on what we've already been working on. Get the community involved, see what else needs to be added to the list, put it before the board, put it before the community. But I think if you just start with a simple list, if a dozen or 2 dozen things that have already been suggested in the last 20 or 30 years,
then you can start picking it apart, and maybe one or two are gonna rise to the top pretty quickly.
So do we do it as a board, or do we do it as a committee, or how do we do that?
Well, like I said, I would suggest starting with town staff. And then we make a list and we put it in your box. We talk about it in a meeting. And then we can, I think that's a good question. I'm not really sure. But if we start with the list with town staff, then you guys can think about it and say, hey, we need a committee for this or not.
I would like to say that we've had a steering committee this whole time that's come to the meetings. We have had a steering committee that's participated, so it would probably be advantageous to, obviously people can give input, but to work with that group through the process and then bring that back to the board. The chamber has participated and business owners.
Okay, the steering committee, does that consist of, who does that consist of?
Well, it consists of some staff, so Michelle and myself and Mark. Deanne was in that. Molly's been coming. Jim Harper, Mike Guriak, Beveridge has been coming. So we've had a pretty diverse.
Yeah, my point was we need to include the
We invited
businesses.
the business.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
May I say, just being part of this process, these girls did a great job. It was on Facebook, it was in the newspaper, it started with larger community meetings, and then we kind of steered down to smaller committees, and I felt really good about this process. And it was my understanding that from the DCI this summer, that these ladies had identified some money to get us to the point that you can have a conversation with a professional to come up with drawings, and then we got to figure out how to get to the next step. But I do want to say the business community, I mean, Molly and I, Jim Harper, Mike, I mean, there was a lot of us there, and it was a really cool experience to be a part of.
Okay. Knock yourselves out.
But I mean, honestly, we would love to have a board member or two. I think we'd sent it out before, and maybe.
Well, and I think Jess, you were on the DCI conferences last summer. I was on it.
Yeah, of course. That's always a good addition to any committee is to have that, representation.
I think that same steering committee and or the DCI committee can be used to help prioritize some of the things that need to happen with the downtown area. And this may be right at the top of the priority list, but we definitely need to get the input of the business community and the historical society and the Blair Street folks to make sure we get the priorities set correctly. And once the priorities are set, then I think this board ultimately takes over with the implementation part of it through a number of public hearings and then decisions being made, because the decisions are ultimately going to be made at the board level. So I think that'll be one of the last parts of it. But once we have a pretty good idea of what our priorities are and where we're going to spend our money first, whether that's one sign and some other priorities that we were looking at, or more signs, whatever that may be, this board is ultimately going to be the ones who approve all of that. So we need to be a part of that process. If just one board member on a committee at this point, moving to, here's our priorities, bring them in front of the entire board has a couple of public hearings about it, and then we decide what we're going to do. So I don't think that process is that difficult. I think we just want to make sure that we do it, give enough people the chance to get their input in, which the wayfinding thing definitely did. They had a lot of public meetings over at Kendall. I attended one of them myself. So
I see on this map where Cement Street is down here, and it's not down there. You got it the same place as Adams Street, and it's actually.
it's just a typo.
Yeah. Mike?
I think we've had enough of discussions that have been open to the general public, but all of us can see the people that have been there. It's basically the same core group. There's probably 8 to 10 of us or so that show up every time with that interest of getting this done and so forth. So as far as like these things with public meetings and so forth, everybody's had a chance. And the last couple of times that we've done this, it was an open public meeting. The same 7 or 8 people show up who have the real interest. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel. What I'd like to do is get some of those same people who I know still have that interest interest, and they will be that steering committee, it's some representative from the town council, representative from business, representative from historic districts and so forth. We know who those people are. And I'm happy to say I'm one of them, Chris is one of them. You know, everybody is.
Mike, the only thing I have to say about that, and I think you're right, I mean, there always seems to be a core group for anything that comes up,
Yeah.
but since we're incorporating this into it, I mean, that brings up a new scenario, you know, as far as.
It does, but I just don't want to, you know, keep on saying we gotta open up everything again. I think we got people who have the real interest and the drive and the ambition to get this done, and done in a good way, an historic way, or whatever way you want to see it. So I'm not, you know, we got to be careful about saying, okay, we do this, and then we're going to open up another public meeting, and another public meeting, and another. You know, I think we've given the general public, bless them, a very good chance on several occasions to show up, and it's basically the same 8 people. Those are people who have the interest, and those are people that should be really considering all this designs, locations, and so forth.
I agree with that 100%, Mike, and I think we've gotten to this point with the help of those folks that did take an interest. I think the only thing left before we start implementing this stuff is just comparing this with the other ideas that are on the DCI report and making a priority. I mean, that can happen in one meeting, essentially. You know, see what the priorities are. Once we have the priorities, we can start implementing stuff, and we can, every budget season, we can say, this is how much we're going to do, these are the grants we're going to go for, and start getting it done. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. It already has been to some extent, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because there has been a lot of meetings about this, and the buy-in has been there with the same core group of people. So yeah, let's prioritize it and start getting it done.
You bring up a good point in that we need to start saving for this. We can't wait for grants, you know, assume that we're gonna get funded from outside sources.
Right.
If we wanna make this happen, we have to make it happen.
And we need to do that in budget season. That's when all of the ideas become implemented, is during the budget process. So. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Does anybody, I've heard quite a couple of people kind of prefer this one, but.
Nothing.
Can I say something about that? I would just be careful with that one because it almost emulates Durango's too much.
Thank you. That's true. It also emulates several other areas I've been in
I've
that
seen
look a
too
little
many
bit too
times.
similar.
And so to be unique and different, I'm wishy-washy about that one, honestly.
I'm not wishy-washy about that at all. I don't like that. And not because it's terrible, because I've seen that design in many of the locations, the same, the concrete piers, even if it had minerals put into it. So I do like this because it represents more of the mining type, you know, value that we value. Matter of fact, I talked to somebody there in the back who suggested that that could even look more old mining. We've got a lot of rusty things around here. If it were up to me, I'd weld on a bunch of rusty things on those stands right there, so old shovels, pick heads, and everything else, and make it look even
It should be
more.
visually interesting. See, if the town says something manufactured, it's a Victorian mining town, something with a mining theme might be appropriate.
These are wonderful. They're a little too perfect.
You know, Mike, I have a preference, but I think any of these are going to be way better, you know, and look really good. Regardless of which one we ultimately decide on, they all look really good. Both these ideas look really good, and even changing them a little bit, they're still going to look really good. And so I think we need to not tear ourselves apart arguing about which one we're going to do, and just get a consensus and move forward on it.
I'm just all for the uniqueness of Silverton.
I agree with that.
Even something like signs look the same.
I propose using solar cells to do constant lighting, because we talked about that in the meeting as well. And you can eliminate a lot of infrastructure that would have to go in to create this in an area that would need additional power or anything like that, just by setting up in solar. So,
You can use the most modern technology,
Yes,
and
it can.
always say.
LEDs and solar would be nice and cheap.
Mark, I'm gonna put you on the hot seat there.
He was awesome on our board.
There was and Katie, I'll ask you too, there was another one that we had passed on to you guys that came from internally with the staff?
Mm-hmm. The one that Mark drew?
Yes.
Yeah, so we kind of took his idea and, you know, kind of still kept two different concepts. You know, that one, it was good, you know, it gave us a lot of ideas, but it felt like it almost brought too much, you know, mining versus Victorian versus more natural together. So we kind of tried to keep it, whether we did more of a mining, you know, idea option versus a more natural option. So that's kind of how we interpreted his input.
All it was input, so.
Yeah.
I scribble a lot, so.
It was a good scribble.
Well, you can nudge design slightly, so.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie. I guess you're gonna.
Thank you. Very nice.
Okay, the other thing is, I think that along with Sarah and Don's ideas too, I think that since the staff and the group have been working so much, why don't you put your, you know, the things that you know, your lists, and put them together, and then get them to us, so that we have something we can look at too. You know, because it's like you guys haven't just been sitting here twiddling your thumbs. You know, because you're on the ground level and you get your feet to the ground. You know what you're looking at and what, you know, what's out there and everything. Plus the group. You know,
Yeah, and I really value what Fritz was saying about looking back, because I've seen, you know, just being on our shared drive, I see all these projects and studies and ideas that have been worked on over time that weren't completed. I mean, that's popped up. I know exactly what you're talking about because I've seen all these things. So I think I really would love to work on compiling a list of what those are in the last 15 years so that you guys can prioritize, you know, and just piece it, and with, of course, Mark, I mean, he's going to see the big picture there as the planner, but I think we should access those things and put it together.
Yeah,
Just
so,
a group together.
yes,
Yeah.
as well as eliminate the ones that aren't.
Right, and how they all fall down, right? You know, however long later, how do they really all fall into the big picture, so.
Sounds like a thing for the planning commission.
Right on.
But yeah.
The planning commission would be happy to help out in any way that they possibly can, I'm sure.
Said Malcolm as he sat there.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
And we, you know, we are going to compile and get back and add on and subtract and multiply and.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Eventually write a check.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're down to the approval of the consent agenda. So we've got payroll, accounts payable, we have the additional check for cash for $300 for the judges for tomorrow.
Did you find all of the election judges you needed? Good. Excellent.
Put together. We have the quarterly financial statement, the visitor center financials for March, and then the minutes for 4/10. And the quarterly financial statement is up until the end of March. So, and then we have special event application for the Iron Horse Bicycle Classic that's coming again. They also are going to be doing the veterans. They're going to bring the veterans and their families in again and have a special production up at Memorial Park after the race. And then we have a special event liquor license application from the Silverton Single Track IHBC. So that's all under the consent agenda. So I would entertain a motion.
I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, so we have approval for the consent agenda from trustee McDougal. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and a second from trustee Mizel. Any discussion? Okay, roll call please, Sarah.
Trustee Wiggert?
Yes.
Trustee Renauden?
Yes.
Trustee McDougal?
Yes.
Trustee Mizel?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeKay?
Yes.
Mayor Tupi?
Yes. Okay, so now we're down to 5, which is the administrator's report. So, Ms. Hutchinson?
I just want to focus on the one thing in our report this evening, and that's the mobile app. And I think you all got my write-up on that. So I've been working with Deanne, and we have sat through a presentation from a company that I narrowed down to be sort of our go-to people for a mobile app, and it looks really promising as far as it's a turnkey application that we can just sort of fill it as a template that we can fill in all our information. We can provide a historic walking, self-guided walking tour that's narrated, and we can do reservations for hotels and restaurants online, and we can do all of our recreation, our maps, trail maps, events coming up, the weather, you name it, and then at the same time we can stream live businesses can stream their banner ads or punch buttons. It also has the feature that visitors can give their input, their feedback on a blog, and local businesses can do the same, so then we have some interaction between tourists and locals, and we get instant feedback on sort of what, is it effective, is it working for us, and what are their likes or dislikes about our services, our community. And we can sell these, so Dan and I are going to work on establishing this app right off the bat. And I'm sorry if I write it like this here. But the long-term model is that we can sell these sponsorships. There's a limited amount of banner ads that we can have. They recommend 3, I think we can go up to 5. And then there are smaller links for other businesses that can run their ads, including discounts, package deals, that sort of thing, when people come into town. And the whole app for the whole app for a year is $7,000. But if you look at, we have over 100 businesses in town. There's a relatively moderate but fair fee that we can charge for a sponsorship for these businesses to advertise on this app and have it not cost the visitor and not cost the town or the taxpayers, and just help promote everyone.
I think it's a really, really good idea. This is a very powerful tool for people who work in the customer service, or let me turn that on as well.
For people who work in customer service, this is a really powerful tool because we get a lot of questions from tourists. Where is this? Where is that? Where do I go? One of the things they can do is say, hey, download the app. It's got a map. It tells you where everything is. Let me give you some quick pointers, and then I can go on to assisting the next customer. Because sometimes that's a major problem is when you're trying to get customers in and out of the door, especially trained customers who have a limited amount of time.
I think I wrote that up in my little write-up, but I do want to point that out, that when the majority of our tourism is coming off the train and they have an hour, hour and a half, I don't know how long they have, but it's limited. If we can increase their experience here, they're walking away with something more, and we're benefiting more from that.
That's right. If they have this app already downloaded by the time they get off the train, they can spend their time their time is spent a lot better, in the sense that instead of wandering around trying to find something, they know where they're going to go, and they have more time to spend money. So I think it's a really, really powerful tool, and I'm glad we're doing it.
And now will the chamber handle the sponsorship order?
Well, that's going to come back down to, we really do need to have a position and we're looking into that. Sarah and I are going to meet with the tourism director, which is what they've done in Pagosa Springs, and it's been a really successful model. And in talking to her, a lot of other municipalities are going and looking to her for guidance in that. We need to evaluate what that position, and we've tried it. It's not been successful over and over since I've been here. I've seen it since its inception. It just wasn't quite right, and we're going to try again, but I think we need to do a little research on what the position is. But we really do need to have an ambassador for the community, somebody that people can reach out to, somebody who's doing our consistent marketing for the community. I talked to Deanne about it. Deanne is the chamber director. She is a representative of her members, and we need someone who's going to be a representative of the entire community, whether or not they're part of the chamber, and do the marketing for us, and most importantly, that we have a consistent face in the town.
Is that something that with economic development that Katie can do?
I really think we need to have a dedicated full-time position to that and stick with it, and we just need the right hire. It has to be the right person, somebody that can be long-term.
So does that mean, say, the visitor center, because the town helps fund the visitor center, am I correct?
Well, we own the visitor center, and therefore we
fund that, don't we?
yes.
Okay.
It's our property.
For the operation of the visitor center, that we would combine that possibly, or with, they would oversee, I mean, there'd have to be.
I don't think that it can be combined with the chamber per se, but perhaps with the visitor center. And if we wanted to put a tourism director there in that role and take over that operation, that's a possibility.
Because in reality, the chamber makes $96 a week to manage it, and then we should run it, pay you rent. It was my understanding in the history that the town was kind of flighty about the operations, maintaining the operations of the visitor center, so the chamber stepped in to ensure the day-to-day operations. So the visitor center is funded completely by the town, it's also a function of town, but it's been a good partnership. But what Michelle and I have been talking about is it'd be really nice to have collaboration in this community and to have a spokesmodel come out of the town of Silverton. Because the experiences that are happening out there, not only in our business community, but our events, has been shaky at best. And it usually lands on me and just me, and it would be nice to have a partner, especially around events like Dale. Dale's saying he's bringing in $408,000 into this community, and the point of contact should really come out of the town of Silverton. As well as, at 46 years of the Iron Horse, this is the first time they ever wanted a contract with you guys. So I think it's a customer service issue. As far as our events go, our community goes, and our business community, a trend that we're seeing out of Caitlin's surveys is one of the biggest impediments that the business community is saying is working with the town of Silverton. And whether it's turnover, if it's inconsistency, whatever that is, I think that having a consistent, positive, proactive town of Silverton steward out here and a cohort with the chamber, but looking at the workload, that would be something you definitely want to take into consideration. Who and where you want to delegate things to. Every town, most towns that I deal with, invest in themselves, and part of investing in themselves is being pro-business, pro-tourism. So Michelle has done an excellent job with looking at what are all your surrounding communities doing. But I would also be cautious of the workload and what those job descriptions are, and still having collaboration with the chamber.
But I do think as a town, we have been very supportive as far as always funding the visitor center. I think that's been a high priority from every council prior to this council. And I think that message should also be sent to the community, is that we do feel that's a priority, we fund it. And I just would like to make sure that that's also known.
Oh, absolutely. The visitor center has actually nothing to do with the chamber members. In order for an outside person to get into the visitor center, they have to pay into the Chamber of Commerce. But the visitor center has always had a very clear line of it is open to anyone from the town of Silverton. Those folks down there are not staff of the Chamber of Commerce. They are staff from the town of Silverton. That is a completely separate checking account. That is a completely separate fund. And they are absolute ambassadors for not only this town, but this county. And it's, in my opinion, that is common knowledge, and I have been very adamant about making that clear to any new business that comes into town.
Is your idea that we can use a tourism director to also facilitate running the visitor center as opposed to
Well, that's
hiring?
a possibility. I think we should look at all of our possibilities. I mean, that's just one option. But I think you all are looking into, different ways of handling our marketing, our communication to the community. I think we could look at this many different directions.
My point is just taking to consider that for that $96 a week, or a week, is 15 to 20 hours of staff time. So if you are going to delegate those kind of tasks, you may want to increase the budget.
I just wanted to say too that Pagosa's has this really successful model, so we thought we'd go down and chat with this woman. But we've also, talked to Uray and Cortez, and just looking at what are their models for that type of role, and they kind of all have a different need. And so Pagosa's may not be the exact answer, but it's definitely worth looking at like the other ones were and figuring out.
Well, I really think the event coordinator position should be what we're talking about. It should morph itself into not just that, it should become the town ambassador, the tourism director, however you want to label it or name it, whether it be full-time or part-time, that's up to the board to decide. But that's the direction it really needs to head in. Because somebody sitting there just taking wedding reservations at Kendall doesn't, it doesn't have the scope that it should really have. It really needs to be something that's community interactive. It needs to be running the app, downloading everything, selling those banner ads, even if it's conjunction with the chamber. I would forego my $1,400, almost $1,500 a year in Durango Magazine to put it on a banner ad on that app. That app is probably one of the most important things it has going. So if you incorporate that into what the tourism events coordinator, however you want to do it, and you make that a goal, then I really foresee it happening. Using the visitor center as their office and having them a little bit more interactive with the public, it'll make a big benefit in the future. I mean, you have to look at it as a long-term goal.
May as well. Yeah, and that would allow us to have, a tourism director that handles all of those things, the marketing, the events, everything. We had a full-time events coordinator, a full-time tourism director that took on those events would give them a substantial workload, and that was one of the things that I was worried about originally with the event coordinator is there enough workload for a full-time employee? But I think when you incorporate all of these other things into it, that's probably the ideal employee to hire. I agree with Molly.
I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, because you think about ideas, or we're looking at different. So I'm really glad. I'm glad to hear that you guys.
We push these around and we have all these
Ideas,
sounding boards,
yeah.
and we all talk to each other, and then we all keep coming up to the same consensus. And that's what it is. Who is our community ambassador, liaison, tourism director that we have that interaction with? Because we do own our events, and we make sure that they go along with that pitch. What if you got that one person there that shakes the hand the whole way and helps everything, helps the paperwork? I mean, just that whole entire process, making it easy so that way we don't have people that come up here and go, well, I want to hold an event here, but it seems too long. Nobody wants to be there for me. So we've got to make it, that way. That really works together.
Going back to that, I've been on the chamber board for a few years, back a few years. I'm super excited about this app. We've been talking about this for a long time. So hats hats off to you for getting it, finally getting it done. Whatever we can do to push that through, it's huge. Thank you.
It's gonna be a big help for the tourists and a big help for our workforce.
So where are we as far as the events coordinator, which actually the name could be changed in a situation like that?
I think we want to do a little more research, try to fine tune it a little more. I think we're stuck on issues with the job description as it is right now. But I think we're close to, I would be comfortable in advertising and hiring that position if we all feel comfortable and it seems like we all do, we're just having this conversation right now, that we all sort of see the same direction that this position needs to go.
I think it needs to be called something different.
Absolutely.
And Michelle and I really, just success, right? So that's why that job description feels really important, and so that it's like specific and
the title.
And the title, and just we want success for whoever that person is for the long term, like she's saying. So if it takes a little longer to kind of do that research and then have you put something together, yeah, that's where my head's at.
I think looking at the communities in our area that have successful tourism programs like Pagosa Springs, that's a really good thing to do for us, because it's going to give us a lot of really good ideas will come out of that process. So I would say take your time and set up a job description or a department, whatever you want to call it, that is going to handle all of those needs after you find out what those needs really are. I'm all for it.
So consensus of the board is to go forward?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Michelle?
Not for me.
John, I know we got information from Public Works. Do you want to?
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief tonight unless, if y'all have any questions on my written report. Again, it's just basically what we've been up to about the last month or so, and ongoing stuff. We had our first Public Works Committee meeting last week, and I expect great things from those committee meetings in the future. I think Trustee Meisel and Trustee Riegert were also enthusiastic. Unfortunately, Malcolm couldn't make that one. I'd like to try to get a regular schedule going for the meetings. And I'd prefer to do the Thursday before the last meeting of the month. So if you all can think about that, we're trying to knock them out right after the work day. So we could do a Public Works or a Buildings and Grounds meeting. Those are the ones that I'm involved with. But this could move around a little bit. I thought that worked well. That we had a chance to touch base before a meeting. But the Buildings and Grounds crew, I don't know if you guys want to try to get into a regular routine as well.
Probably be a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's plan on doing it Public Works Thursday. Let's see, next.
Public facilities.
Oh, public utilities.
Yes.
Public utilities, right.
So
okay.
that people don't think that they're out to check on the Public Works Department.
Right, that's fine.
So we changed it to protect the
ready to be
innocent.
transparent. So next month, the second meeting of the month would be on the 22nd.
Okay.
Is that correct? The first meeting of the month would be on the 8th. The second meeting would be on the 22nd. Now, those are board meetings. So the committee meetings would be on the 18th.
Okay, and you're planning on having both of them on the 18th?
We can do that. If you guys want to do utilities at 5 and then Buildings and Grounds at 6.
Okay.
Is that, actually, can we flip that? Because Chris George is on the Buildings and Grounds, and he might want to head back down to Durango. So if you could do it right after work, that would probably be better. So if we could do Buildings and Grounds at 5 on May 18th, and Public Utilities at 6, May 18th. And just kind of pencil that in and let me know if anything changes. We only had 2, again, trustees, but I still think it was a productive meeting. And anytime we can get 2 trustees and at least 1 or 2 staffers, I think it's worth getting together. And if there's not a lot going on, we might be able to be out of there in 20 minutes. If there's a lot going on, it might take a little bit more discussion. Anyway, that was good. Second, I wanted to bring up, this is coming back from some work Bob Nevins did. He wanted to install a loading zone on Green Street between 11th and 14th Streets. So it'd be 3 blocks. And we've run this by the engineers. It's something that we can do. It's not a problem. It'd be a 10-foot loading zone. It'd be, so you would have a, right in the middle of Green Street, where the trucks park now.
Right.
So you'd have a loading zone there. I think that we'd get a lot of buy-in. I know we'd get buy-in from our merchants. But it would probably increase safety. I know the drivers would like it. It's something that we can do.
Didn't we, I'm sorry, John, didn't we budget money for that, for striping?
We do have money for striping.
Yeah.
And we're due to stripe this year. But our streets budget is really tight. But I'll get to that in a minute. The striping budget that we have right now is just for restriping Green Street. And in order to lay out a whole new double stripe for loading zone is going to cost a few $1,000s more, I'm sure.
I thought we had that in the budget.
I thought that we did too, so
It's
that's
like
a big
$8,000 or
communication.
something? Yeah, I think it's in there.
We might have to talk about that. But regardless of whatever we had in the budget for our streets budget, it's compromised. Okay, as I've been saying for the last couple months, our streets budget's in trouble. So, one thought that I had was we don't stripe this year. We let the stripes fade, and then we come back and redo everything next year. I think we could get through another year safely with the stripes we have. Or we could do a partial striping where we do all the parking, the double yellow line down the middle, except for those 3 blocks, and let the stripes in the middle fade. Or the third option would be do the whole shebang now.
Did the engineer come back and say that we need to change the angle?
We do not need to change the angle. We can leave the angle. Originally he thought we might have to change the angle from 60 degrees to 45 degrees. We have 60 degrees. We get a lot more cars parked the steeper the angle is. So anyway, those are some options that we have. Really it's going to come down to, do you want to do this? Do you see a problem with the loading zone, first of all? Town staff, engineers, and Mark and I haven't really chatted about this much, but it seems to be a good idea in general, and there aren't any real problems.
I'm just hoping that tourists won't use it as a parking place.
Wow. It'll be marked as a loading zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sheriff's good with it too, right?
The sheriff is very good with it, yeah.
And we've also had numerous feedback, complaints, whatnot from our delivery services, our transporting vehicles, wanting a loading zone. So their input, from what I've seen, is that they would like to have that.
One other thing that I might note is that I touched base with the guy that did our striping last year, and he was by far the low bid, and I thought he did a great job. Or not last year, the year before last. And I touched base with him a few weeks ago, and he's already booked. So ideally, you want to have your street washed right before you stripe it. I've already got the fire department is planning on washing our streets on May 19th. So that's going to be tricky to get the washing done right after the streets are cleaned. So, something else that we've done in the past, and I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you as far as the striping goes, but sometimes the state will be striping the highway and they'll run a truck up Green Street and just be done. And that's great because it's no cost to us. So there's a lot of stuff kind of floating around as far as this goes. As far as direction or recommendations, I'm open if you guys have any suggestions or preferences as far as this goes.
I know some of the parking stripes are badly faded.
Right.
And to me, that's without good lines, you're going to have people double parked everywhere. Parking is already an issue. I've heard it from a number of people who work in the downtown area that parking is a major issue already. So having stripes there is probably, I would be for at least doing that part of it. Even if we have to go out there and get on our hands and knees and do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's something that we can do. We can do the parking in-house. I mean, I can get the guys out there with the roller and just roll them.
Yeah.
You know, we don't
And
have
the
to
garden
have-
hose, spray off the ground, let it dry.
Yeah, or just do a good sweeping.
Right.
I would look at the crossings, because there's just a couple that are, just because of liability into it, you want those crossings to be also.
So what I'm getting from you all is that we should probably go ahead and schedule some striping this summer. And ideally, we want to go ahead and install the loading zone.
If you can, that would be, I
Okay.
think that would be.
I like your idea of just doing the parking spots and the crossings and letting the middle line fade.
Yeah. Well, we could do that. I mean, we could do the double yellow line, except for the 3 blocks where we're planning on doing the loading zone, and we could do the loading zone. Why don't I get a firm price on the loading zone? And if it's a reasonable price, then I'll schedule it. I'll just make the decision and schedule it. If it's going to be several $1,000s more to lay out the new lines, then we'll let it fade.
So in the loading zone, there won't be the double yellow line either in there. That could
No.
be confusing.
No, it'll be totally open, except for the faded, whatever's left.
It will be a yellow line over here and a yellow line over here.
And then it
it'll be
squeezes
empty.
down to 2. Yeah, but I mean, for people that aren't familiar with that, I'm really afraid people are gonna,
Well, the signs, like the crosswalk signs, we could do something like that.
yeah.
too. Say loading zone like our.
If you look at how Telluride has done it, it's really, really well signed. Although they use theirs as for more than a loading zone, there's also business owner parking, I think, too.
Right. Yeah.
But theirs is really well signed, and it doesn't seem to be an issue when you go into town. At least I perceive it as well.
Hey, John, can I throw a suggestion?
Yes.
There, you notice the big end dumps going back and forth, they're getting ready to chip seal Mullis, lower and upper. That means after chip seal, they gotta paint, they gotta stripe. Maybe give Paul Wilson a call.
Yeah.
See if they couldn't give us
That's a
a
good
shot in the
idea.
middle. And they're gonna be here anyway.
Okay. So I'm going to look at different options, but maybe the least expensive option for us is if we can get some help from the state on the lines going down the middle. I can have the crew paint the parking lines, and then we'll look at different options for the parking. Maybe I can just have a contractor come up one morning and just do the loading zone only, lay it out and paint it. Okay, that's good feedback. Do y'all have anything else to add about the striping?
Can I make a suggestion, John?
Sure, Molly.
For you're gonna have town crew who's striving, put it on Facebook, give us all of them up, because you would see Scott would be out there with a broom. Even if they already washed the streets, we would all be out there cleaning in front of our spaces. So if you give everybody that's a business owner on Main Street a heads up, we'll leave it down, it'll be clean when you go to paint it.
Will do.
Yeah.
Great. And the paint that we use or that professionals use as well, to paint these stripes, it dries very quickly.
Yeah, but the
So,
last week.
yeah, and we'll put some cones, and then usually you can drive on it within a half an hour. So it'd just be a moving thing, and we might only do a block a day sometimes, you know. But, okay, that's great feedback. Anything else on the striping? I'll try to look through here. I don't, that's probably the only stuff that's really. Oh, there is something that I wanted to mention. Since Mike Garriak is sitting here tonight, if any of you have had a chance to go by Columbine Park, it looks fantastic, and it's truly inspired work.
It's awesome. I agree with that 100%.
I don't know of anyone on the town staff that is actually capable of producing such a nice looking job over there. I want to say thanks, Mike.
Just getting started.
And you're not billing us, right? You're not billing us, right?
What?
And this hasn't taken a penny out of our coffers. Mike, this has been just so wonderful for our town. Thank you for putting your time in.
Yes, thank you so much.
I'm just getting started.
I can't wait to see the finished product, but don't overwork yourself now.
I'm trying not to, but it's more than a band shell. Band shell is one aspect of the park. The rest of the park must be attended to too. And so for me, I see a big picture, the whole park, plus band shell, plus anything else. That's just the way I see it.
And I went by with Chris George this morning, and he said that he met with you for
Yes.
a few minutes
Yes.
the other day, and you guys discussed some things, and we looked at everything, and look forward to working with you to make it a better park. I think that's probably pretty good for
Thank
me
you, John.
tonight, unless you guys have anything else. Any other questions?
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
A nice compliment, I can go now. Thank you
You're
all.
waiting for that, huh?
I might thank you.
Mark, do you want to put in your 2 cents?
I don't know, I think I answered enough questions. I'm still buzzing from my last trip back from Butte, so.
We're gonna be hitting you up, especially when it comes to the next agenda item here. Or I guess our lead employee ordinance.
Yeah, I can address that.
Okay. Did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Just getting caught up. A lot of county stuff going on too.
I know, yeah, you guys were all together
Yeah.
all day today.
And I think that's looking really good on Harside Motor Coach. So I think we've got it tight, and we've addressed Cascade Village concerns, and doing our best with the Nordic people. And so,
Did the
and
county
then
commissioners approve the preliminary?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we're going to be on Planning Commission agenda May, what is it, 13th?
For the final?
13th,
Yep,
yeah.
the final. And the engineers have promised that they'll have everything, their act all together and everything. So it's a really positive thing in town.
Sarah?
Yeah. Well, since I am fielding most phone calls and inquiries about renting and all the events coming up, and I know this was an issue for Blair in her role last year, and even, while Erica was there, the conversation had come up a few times. So I really wanted to bring it to your attention, and it kind of speaks to, I think, what Molly was saying about consistency, right? So people know what to expect when they want to hold an event here, or most of all for me, though, is when I see us unable to invest back into particularly Kendall Mountain. It's a concern, and I think, you saw the numbers. If it's not so much, a wedding that comes in, they're normally going to pay the full rate. They don't really ask questions. They get what they need. But it's mostly, nonprofits and locals who have an issue paying the fee that we've set for the daily rate. Or not we, I mean, you guys set that last year in the fee schedule. And so you're going to probably have people coming to you in the next few months that have never been given a bill, and they're going to be asking you for, a break on that. But I mean, if you look at the fact that we had a loss of over $17,000 in revenue because we were inconsistent in charging, locals for use, and we want to support them, but at the same time, we can't reinvest back into like this water fountain and those things. That's a big deal. Like, yes, that water fountain's been broken for 3 years over there or something, right? Or maybe it never worked. I don't know. But if we had that money for the last 3 years, that would have been a substantial amount to reinvest in the property possibly. And I guess I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that, and hope that you'll support that. I mean, I'm recommending that you don't waive fees entirely, but do work with nonprofits as they come to you, because we're setting a standard and it is inconsistent. You have some nonprofits who never question, right? They'll pay their fee every day for the whole use, and then you have other ones who won't pay a dime for any use. And it's unfair. So I'm hoping that you guys will just keep that in mind when people come, and sort of what that is. Because we have cleaning fees, we have our Mavis goes over and cleans after these. Something gets broken, we have a deposit from normal, usage. They don't give deposits, if they break the paper towel dispenser. It's just a hard wear and tear, some of these events are. So, and then that just kind of ties into, I felt pretty good about the increase in fees that I was able to collect, through the deputy clerk's office, and so I think that consistency, working with Bill McDougall and just getting that done, it just shows what consistency can create when people know what's expected of them. So,
I think everyone can benefit from a uniform process, and
right.
it's not necessarily about whether you do or do not waive fees, but everybody goes through the same
Yeah,
process.
thank you for saying that.
A waiver of fees, if they're locals, they're a nonprofit, we love them, they've been here for decades,
course.
they're doing something good for the community. They still have to come and do the same process before the board that everyone else has to do. And that way there's no animosity between different nonprofit or local groups that are, well, this guy's getting it for free and we're paying $75, whatever it may be. Everybody goes through the same process.
Yeah, that's
And
basically.
that creates that sort of fair playing field.
We have to be consistent in order to be fair.
And I do think just in the long run, it's just gonna be a huge benefit. Even if it's gonna be, I just think it's gonna be a tough couple. I'm anticipating, it's gonna be an interesting month or two trying to sort of get that message across. So you'll have people with requests, and that's great. And they should come, to you guys with those requests.
But then everybody will know what's expected.
Sure, exactly.
There won't be any questions at all.
Yeah.
The $150 day rate for a nonprofit is very affordable.
And it depends on what they do. Like the one that pops in my mind, a blood drive. I don't know that they're not making any money. They don't have any fees there. I mean, I'm not saying that they should probably just fill out the form or have the thing like everyone else because that's the process. I'm not saying the blood drive should be paying $150 to set up there. That's a public service, So obviously there's ways to consider different functions. But the process is what I think has been lacking.
And we need to get some consistency from this board as to what fees are we going to waive and which ones are we not. We can't just say, well, we like you, we're going to waive your fee. We don't like you, we're not going to waive your fee. We need to, have some sort of standard.
I don't think that's what it's there.
Oh, no. Well, the one thing though I will say with the banner fees, that is one that people have refused to pay, but that is hard money right there. Like those guys, it takes 2 hours, I think, for two guys is what Chris said, to drive that lift all the way down Green Street, like mess with all the carabiners. I mean, that's actual maybe it's $100. I don't know if $100 actually covers the use of the machine and the two guys for 2 hours. So that's a hard one. I mean, that's one I just don't know if it should be waived. Like, I feel that's actual money,
Didn't we stop waiving? I thought we stopped waiving that.
Right, but we've still had people push through.
Well, I think if they want to push through, then, and they don't want to do that, especially if they know, I think the more information we can give them on how this is going about, we're not just flying a banner up a flagpole.
Right.
All this other stuff is happening. And then if they don't want to do it, well, then they don't get a banner.
Well, and
and there's their choice.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this may be the year of it's their choice. And, if they want it to happen, then they have to realize what goes into making it happen. And that's not being hard-nosed about it, it's being, realistic.
I think change is always, you're always going to have resistance. And
Yes.
just being, on our end, being consistent with our expectations and having the backing of the board will help us be able to make that change.
Well, and circling back to, go back to just other events that come into town, like she was saying, I mean, the Iron Horse has been really, really frustrated with the lack of consistency. Every year they basically have had to come in and explain the process to the new person that's doing that job. So, having those things all in order so that the next person, it's handed to them, and it's just that our events aren't coming in and re-explaining it to us every time. That's really frustrating, and it makes it hard to, it's frustrating for them. So anyhow, I'm glad I was able to get it to you, and I don't know if you guys have any more questions or thoughts on it, but.
Well, I just had a thought about the process when they apply for an event. Just the expectation of what the town is to give towards these events. Is there what, like in-kind service or waiving
That's a big
fees,
one. Mm-hmm.
but that is part of the application?
It is,
It is?
it is to an extent. They need to ask permission. They should be doing that in writing and coming before the board, particularly if they're asking to waive fees. If it comes to in-kind, the town's pretty solid about providing labor, equipment, things like barriers, fencing. We haven't.
So that's asked possibly up front.
Yeah.
It always is, or it is, or I mean, all sometimes. I mean,
It always
it
is.
always is. And there is generally a figure put to?
No, generally the town just does that.
Does what?
So that's something to think about.
So the town does things like provides setup and breakdown, barricades, sometimes road work. Yeah.
And maybe that's something John can think about in that process, is what does that look like, right? For your people to do that work in advance, like when we get an application, it's gonna affect your crew. And I don't think that's been evaluated in the past, maybe in the past preemptively, but it's just something to think about, you know, because like Parks is gonna spend a lot of time over at Memorial setting up for, I mean, I think they'd be supporting the Iron Horse in that, so there's a lot of little things I think that, addition to this, that can be fine-tuned maybe, so that we're not
And
losing.
you're bringing up a good point that if the town is doing work for events, that should probably be evaluated ahead of time, and we know what those costs are going to be. I've seen several events just in this year that have come in here, some sort of sporadically, some not, that they cost the town materials and labor, but then they also displace our personnel from their regular jobs, and we end up with overtime costs, and that's a big deal too. So yeah, we should probably get a little tighter handle on what the overall labor and income sort of services that the town is providing for events.
So is that
Ahead of
part,
time.
is that part of the package that you would hand out then? You know, like the extracurricular parts that.
No, we don't really have that written into our applications.
Do we need to?
We probably do.
And that's actually, that's a kind of a tricky one too, because some of those events generate revenue, right? The tax revenue for our, you know, our businesses are busier, so there's like kind of a line there that I think that we've talked about too, and how does that, so it's something to look at and maybe represent on that particular piece. I mean, I don't know, I don't have an answer for that one, what that looks like.
I would just like to say in defense of the events, you know, Hard Rock 100, $400,000.
See, that's what I'm saying,
1,000
is
people exposed, hundreds in the hills, 300 people here for 5 days. Iron Horse, you know, I mean, it is an expense, but what would it be if
They weren't
these
here?
folks are getting frustrated?
Yeah.
And if they pull out, so what would we lose in the economy? So nickel and diming, or, you know, coming with a list of these, especially the folks who have been coming for all these years, that's what I'm talking about, a very gracious spokesmodel to deliver this information gently and sweetly, if that's the direction you go. But I'm hearing it because I sit on the boards, and then I get the phone calls and the panic attacks. Those are the kind of things just to be extremely conscientious of. Is that maybe they don't need to know our train of thought. Like, hey, the town is now doing this or doing that, because they're already thinking we're dash dysfunctional. So they get nervous banking their events on our town. And I've been working hard at, no offense, stealing events from you, right? Big events. And I met with an events coordinator today, and I asked her why the town of Silverton, and she said, because we don't feel appreciated in your anymore. And I don't want them to say that about us.
Right. And I do get calls. I mean, people tell me the same thing because I hand them their paperwork. I mean, I think we're getting some of the same messaging, and that's kind of why I want to put this out there too. It's not just our facilities, it's the perception that we're putting. And this. So.
Keeping track of those in-kind costs is a good idea. Whether or not we charge those costs back to an event group is in question. I agree with Deanna that if we have, you know, like the Hard Rock 100 race, obviously brings in a huge amount of revenue, and requires very, very, very little in-kind work, we don't need to charge that back to them, but we should be tracking the in-kind work and just where it puts us. Just so for our own information, especially when it comes time to like budget season.
Again, bottom line, we gotta hire the right person. And get them out there, get them in front, events are coming, so I know they're gonna get the research of it. We do need one this summer, right?
Did you have an hourly rate in KRC? You got local rate for 4 hours, $150. This is gonna have to be presented to the quilt group, a bunch of old ladies. I think we're probably not gonna use the visitor center, the Kendall Mountain anymore, because they can't afford that.
Well, no, so
No,
like,
I mean,
no, but
seriously.
Tai Chi, okay, for instance, Tai Chi goes over, they pay $20 a month. And I don't know what you paid last year for the quilting group, but those are the kind of things, you guys are quilting in there. It's not like you're dragging your snowboards in and out and like walking around in boots.
Planning the quilt show.
Right, so don't, I wouldn't even.
I wouldn't even worry about that.
I do appreciate you saying it, but I think.
There are different places and different people that over the years, you recognize, and that's what I kind of meant,
Just like she said, the blood drive, it really does need to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Seriously, I think there's a level of use and an impact on that space depending on what is going on. No, so I actually.
Those folders are pretty well grouped.
Yeah, they are. Those are the movies they show.
And you guys, there is a resolution, and I need to get it from Chris, but there's already like a contract with a few nonprofits that was passed years ago. So I want to bring that forward too. I meant to get it from him, but I think search and rescue, MSI is part of that to use like grounds. So you already have sort of an agreement with some people, and you could extend that, but that would then put them in a lump with this agreement, so it clarifies.
Maybe get all that information together, bring it to the next meeting.
Okay.
And we'll actually make sure we have an actual discussion thing, like on continued business.
Sure, and I can get a list of all the nonprofits, in addition to who you guys could talk about who's doing what, and that sounds like a good idea. Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like the staff has been busy this week, so thank you very much for all your work. So we're down to continued business. And we added the status of Kendall Mountain Recreation Area. So,
Hello, Jeff Robbins for the record, town attorney. I came up for this because I had a discussion with staff about this today. And I see that Larry is not here. If Larry had been here, I would ask him to recuse himself as a board member and come sit out here in the audience. Your staff is kind of caught twixt in between, and it is a difficult situation only because the expired contract was with a trustee member, and that puts everyone in kind of a strange place. But at this point, the status of Kendall Mountain is as follows. The contract for last year's ski rental shop is over. The skis and all the gear should have been out of there a couple of weeks ago. They're still in there. Staff needs to know, do you want me to move to talk to Larry to make sure he gets that stuff out of there? Staff and I have been talking. You've got a number of things that are going on. You're trying to recarpet the place, I understand. The last thing we want to do is recarpet it and then have all that stuff pulled out on brand new carpet.
It's done.
It's done?
It was done today.
Well, you got a problem. The other thing is, I've been talking with Michelle, and she's sort of evaluating what do we do with Kendall? What are our options with Kendall? I understand it's not been making money recently. And so I wanted to give Michelle the opportunity to sort of brief you on ideas she has. It seems to me what you ought to do is we ought to get Larry's stuff out of there. We ought to do an evaluation by looking at all of your options, option A, B, C, and D, and then you pick the option that is in the best interest of this community for this upcoming summer and for next year and for going into the future. And Larry's presentation that he gave is certainly one of the options that's on the table. But as of right now, it's the only option. And it doesn't appear to me that it's a wise business sense for you to award that contract with his stuff already in there and without looking at all of the other options. So that's the discussion that Michelle and I wanted to have with you tonight so that we can get some direction, because right now we're kind of boxed and we're not quite sure which direction to go. So Michelle, do you want to add to any of that?
I want to add a couple of things regarding San Juan Backcountry's contract. They are not paid up for this season still, although we've sent them several invoices. I've reached out to him multiple times to come in and try to negotiate some terms if he wants to move forward and be part of the future picture of Kendall, which he has not done. And that's fine, that's one piece, and not discounting him. But we're also looking at different larger pictures for a possible expansion of Kendall. And that expansion not only includes just the resort itself, but the trail system all the way up to Mollis, and summer recreation, and winter recreation. And we're having some conversations right now with different entities that might be interested in a public-private partnership at Kendall that may afford us a much greater opportunity. So to limit ourselves in a contract with someone with a vendor who's been less than, who hasn't met the terms of the contract that they currently have is, in my mind, not very prudent of this board to do.
Do you think you can bring us back, like Jeff said, A, B, and C, or A and B at least, or?
Absolutely.
And then we can look at it?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that you need to do kind of an analysis of, what are the options that are there. Obviously, the past historic use has not been, it's not making money, and it certainly should, or it seems like it should. And so, with other folks that I work with, that's exactly what we would do, is have the administrator go out there and shake trees and see what's out there, see what options exist. Again, the last thing I want to see happen is it's December 15th and we haven't figured this out. And I think Michelle's incentivized to start bringing back options to you, as soon as she can. And this is just sort of going out and looking around, and obviously, you already have one option that we received from Larry. What else is out there? I think those are the things.
I think I would just caution us not to get tied into a 3-year contract with San Juan Backcountry right now. If you could just give this staff some time to negotiate some other possibilities. In the meantime, it would be wonderful if you could vacate that, because we do need that area for summertime. We've got some major summer events coming up that we expect to be able to use that upstairs for. Plus, we weren't even able to evaluate it, like we just got the carpet replaced, and we couldn't even look at that space as to what repairs and maintenance it needs. And it's our community center. And
I like that back up. Yeah, I want to back up to what Jeff was saying a minute ago. I think they do make rolls of plastic that sticks to the carpet if you're worried about the carpet being destroyed. But when Larry brings the stuff down, it can be covered, and protected. I'd like to discuss who should call Larry on this. Should it be Jeff, or should it be somebody on the board, or you? I think it should be you.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it ought to be you and I, Michelle, at the same time, because, seriously, we're in a breach of contract situation at this point. We've got a holdover tenant that needs to be out. And, that's where we're at. And I just wanted to alert the board to this fact. If this was anybody other than a trustee, I'd already been on the phone with them. But give credence to the fact that it's Larry, and that's one of the situations where it gets difficult when we have a trustee doing a business with the town. And we should look at that as well, but I'm not looking at that. So I'll just be honest with you. I mean, if this was XYZ company, they'd already gotten a letter from me. And I just wanted the board to be aware that that's the next step that I'm recommending as town attorney and that Michelle has been recommending. And we'll do it pleasantly. We'll bring Larry up and, hey, let's figure out a way to make this happen so that we can do the evaluation of the rec center and so that we can get to the board your proposal and the 2 or 3 others that make sense, and then the board can make a decision on what it wants to do.
I think entering into a 3-year contract with San Juan Backcountry basically signs us up for 3 years of the status quo. And we've shown that the status quo is not as good as it can.
For what it's worth, Malcolm, I wouldn't go there. I'm not looking for that discussion tonight.
Okay.
What I'm looking for is just support with us moving forward, getting Larry the help he needs to get the stuff out, and then bringing back to you several options. And I don't want to go into a critique of one option over another because no one's here to defend themselves.
I agree with that. Thank you, Jeff. Good point. I'm all for seeing some options as to what we can do with Kendall. A, it's been bleeding money. B, as your Kendall Mountain operations manager, I can tell you it feels very much like we are running an operation with little to no budget. I feel like there's a lot of things that we need or could use that we don't have because we don't have the money for it. And so we're scraping by, essentially. And if there are options that are going to allow us to do better than just scrape by, we definitely need to look for those options. I agree 100%.
Michelle, I know that you guys have been working on this for a while, but could you explain a little bit more in depth of what you foresee at Kendall if a private person were to take over the operation? What would you expect of them?
I
think it's premature to ask Michelle that question because she's just starting her work, and I'd like to flesh stuff out with other folks and bring back a full package so that when you see things, you see the full package of all the stuff.
Well, I just would like to get an idea, Jeff, and I asked her to give that to me.
I understand, and I'm telling you what I think would be a better approach.
Well, I'm thinking I'd like to get an idea of what she has over there. I'm sorry.
I think ultimately we want a master plan of right now.
Okay, is that including the ski area and everything? Or just the building?
Oh, we're talking the ski area,
Okay.
not necessarily.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
I agree with that. Having a plan for the ski area itself is something that we need to do. We've been operating it at status quo ever since the day it was opened. And no one has ever, each year I turn in, you guys got this report, each year I turn in this report and it has a number of ideas of things that can be or need to be done. And we never get to those because we're always so drowned with other obligations. So maybe the private sector can help us with some of that, as well as the fact that there are maintenance issues that haven't come up that likely could, just like John deals with the water plant and he says, well, in the next 10 years we could need a huge whatever. Well, sometime in the next 5 or 10 years we could need the gearbox rebuilt or a new haul rope. These are large, big ticket items that cost lots of money, and so we want to make sure that we're in a place when that happens that it doesn't shut us down and that we can still move forward and get those things done and keep the ball rolling. And so cultivating multiple options, as Spock would say, cultivating multiple options is the logical thing to do.
And that almost feels like a legacy issue if we're looking at, you have this really, really strong sense from what I understand of the community building that place from way back when until now where they're still supporting it. And so how can you carry that forward in a way that's sustainable? So that's kind of, it's been a gift from the people who've put their, heart into that space. And
that's exactly right, Sarah. There's a lot of people who when this first got started, put a lot of time and effort into it with the idea that things were going to slowly get better and better and better and better and better. And what has happened is we got to a point where it works, and we've kept it at that status quo for the last few years that I've been there. And so it's enlightening to know that there could be some other options that will help us to better ourselves as a ski area.
We need some action on your,
Nope.
support you or just consensus for you?
I've got consensus that Michelle and I should work with Larry and help him get out, and then Michelle's got consensus to evaluate options on top of the one that you've already received and bring that back to us.
Yeah, absolutely, it's gonna come back to communication.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Did you have anything to add to, or are we saving, do you have any other,
No, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you and I talked on the phone earlier today, and I should have done this under department reports, because I guess I'm a department. Just as an FYI, Ken Charles and I have been in contact with 4 individuals to potentially be a facilitator for the discussion that we had at the last meeting. We are interviewing the 2 that we tend to like the best tomorrow. And I will be back to the board just as soon as I have more information along those lines, and then we'll try to get something set up. So
we don't have a date on that yet.
We don't have a date on it yet. That's going to be, I mean, it may be, I'm asking you, you know, and I'll probably do it via email, just to, and then what I'll do is, maybe I'll do one of those things where you pick dates, I forgot what you call them, doodle polls or something like that, and try to do it that way. But we've got some good candidates, I think, to bring in some third party to come in and help, and I should be in touch with you. So everyone try to check your emails from me over the next 3 or 4 days.
Thank you, Jeff.
thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, so, the next one is the emergency ordinance 2017-04 for the RV employee parking in town. This is the one that we actually put together last year, when we had a couple of people that were requesting things. And I'm not sure how many people actually used it, but we're looking at the same request, just adding it on for this year. So, Mark, did you want to?
Did you see, I'll just note a few issues, and I don't know if you want to add that to the ordinance, but, you know, in case somebody abuses it, but certainly the times of usage was defined. Sanitation, self-contained, that's important. Site appearance, where the camper or trailer is placed on the site. Quiet times, like no generators, hours, who manages it. How much stuff do you put on the site? Electrical provided, and then fees paid. You know, what's the impact? Trash, water, you know, how much does that impact the city? So that's what I kind of noted. If I don't know if there were problems or not. Not very many people took it on, but I can see enough people take it on, it could be a problem, so.
I don't know, I think the person that probably would have gotten any, you know, back feed or whatever would have been Bill McDougal. And I don't know if he actually.
There was one issue last year that he had to address. And then I think it was a permitting. Am I incorrect? There's permitting in there.
There is.
Nobody requested a permit, so it wasn't utilized in that way. But there was just one issue that he went and addressed that I remember from last year, so.
And there's that, is it a friend, is it a rental, is it a, yeah.
No, it was specifically, as I remember, it was supposed to be for people that were actually working for someplace.
And that's built into the
And it
ordinance.
was, you know, and that was all it was. It wasn't, we were suddenly going to have friends staying on people's property. It was specifically for employment.
I think that's what the problem was, so.
You know, guys, we did this for 1 year last year because we didn't know where we were going to be at with housing right now. And it seems like virtually nothing has changed with our housing situation from the time that we adopted this last year to today. And although many people, you know, this may not be utilized that much, it doesn't cost us anything to do this, and it provides another option, an option that we can provide right away for very little effort and allow people to, just another option for housing. And if only 2 people use it, well, that's 2 people that used it. If only one person uses it, well, there's one employee that had a place to live that otherwise wouldn't have. So this is a no-brainer for me. And I think we should do it again for the period of 1 year, and then next year we can come back to this table and we can say, well, where are we at? Conceivably, we might have some additional, housing may look different a year from now. It may not. If it does not, then maybe it's just, we go through this again next year, but this is not a long process, so I don't know how you guys all feel about it.
Housing should look different. We are proceeding on departments, the 12 units.
Right, and that's my thought. And next year we can look at that and say, well, hey, we've got those, but let's do this anyway. Or we can say, hey, we've got those, we want to try to direct everyone over there, let's not do this. We need to look at it a year from now, but as of right now, we're in no different position than we were last year when we adopted this.
I would say we had very little impact. Sorry. We had very little impact from this last year. Hardly anyone participated, but the reason that I did put it on the agenda now, we're revisiting it, is because I did have several business owners call and ask me about it. Are we going to look at this?
Do you feel there's enough provisions in there to protect everybody?
Yeah, I like the ordinance. It's simple, but it also includes all of the necessary things that you just brought up: trash, noise, the licensing, density, all of that. So
It seemed like Bill could keep up with it, so it didn't seem like it was a problem according to what it was.
I didn't hear anything from him saying that it was an issue.
I would support this ordinance again this year, for 1 year only.
And what we can do is at the end of the season, kind of look at it more in depth and make sure that we crossed all of our T's and dotted our I's. And then there wasn't something that suddenly, was something we didn't think about. But I think we've got 12 good.
Mark, is there anything that jumps out at you that scares you? Or?
Not yet.
Somebody will do something, but.
Until we have more people doing it, we won't know.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, Madam Mayor, that we approve ordinance number 2017-04, allowing campers within the town for the purpose of housing qualified employees on a temporary seasonal basis.
Okay. I'll second that. So we have a motion from Trustee McDougal and a second from Trustee Renell. Any further discussion from the board? Okay, roll call, please, Sarah.
Trustee Meisel?
Yes.
Trustee Renata?
Yes.
Trustee Rupert?
Yes.
Trustee McDougal?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeKay?
Yes.
Mayor Tukey?
Yes. And then the last thing under new business is the public hearing for the new liquor license for M&D LLC, the Bent Elbow. Mark and Darlene Watson have purchased the Bent Elbow.
Did I give you her letter?
Yes, you did.
Oh, yeah.
There's a letter, because they couldn't be here tonight, Mark had some major surgery. And so, there was a letter in your packet. And then also the sheet that we always get from this chair.
I would just put it in the plug for them that they are very ethical business people, and they're very responsible generally with their alcohol sales. And they purchased the Bent Elbow for anyone who didn't know that, and are looking to continue operations there. And I think we can expect that they would be very good.
So I guess we'll open it to public hearing if anybody has any comments out there.
Pass it.
Okay, so then we'll close the public hearing. So unless there's any more discussion from the board?
I'm grateful they bought it.
On your birthday, no, that's great.
That was a big.
Finalized my order.
Okay, so then I would entertain a motion from someone to approve the new liquor license for M&D LLC, the Bent Elbow.
She got it before me.
All right.
I'll second Barbara's motion.
Good job, Barbara.
Barbara.
Yes. That's gonna be a first.
Yes.
I'm quick on the draw.
Yes, you are.
A lot of important things going on in my world.
Okay, so we have a motion from trustee Renowden and a second from trustee McDougal. Any further discussion on the board? Okay, roll call, please, Sarah.
Trustee McDougal?
Yes.
Trustee Meisel?
Yes.
Trustee Uyghur?
Yes.
Trustee Renowden?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Decay?
Yes.
Mayor Tukey?
Yes. So Mark and Darlene, wherever you are, go forth and prosper.
Yes.
Okay, unless there's anything else.
Can I just ask a quick question? Did we address this at all from Eureka Station? That was on our,
We didn't address that. I did address them, sorry, I emailed them back, and whereas I see that as sort of an administrative issue that we can address, particularly in our special event, they bring up some really good points.
they absolutely.
That we should be particularly we should be notifying the business owners within an area where they may be having street closures.
And I like the 9 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock the night before. There was an issue last year, the year before, where a person went into the Ben Elbow and yelled out that anybody in there eating needed to get out there and move their cars. And that was pretty tacky.
Yeah, right. So I think we can address that within the application process. And then I sent it and I told them that I was going to send it to all of you, just because I thought you should be aware that that was their concern out there.
Yeah.
But we'll address that internally.
He brought us some really good points, or they did, really good points.
Congratulations to Molly on the opening of the Capitol.
Yes.
Thank you.
And don't you want to make an announcement?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
Go for it, ma'am.
our daughter, Hannah McKay, received the Betcher Scholarship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You go, girl. Tell her I
And
said
you
that.
can almost not say it without crying. Oh, how exciting.
So Mark, you need to get a picture.
I know.
Yes, that's a big deal.
Yeah, congratulations.
That is awesome.
Yes. Thank you. And she got accepted to my alma mater, so Silverton is, yeah, she got accepted to Regis.
All right.